Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Emma Oxford, Director of Community Relations. So welcome to the third and final of this fall's Books and Coffee programs. Once again, we thank the Friends of Concordia for supporting this and many other of our events on campus that are open free of charge to the community, such as our business breakfast talks. And don't miss the business breakfast on December the 15th. David Weston, the president of ABC News, will be speaking at that event at 7:30 in the morning with breakfast from 7. So if you're an early riser, I encourage you to come to that talk, which should be really interesting. And there are invitations to that out in the hall, which you can pick up on your way out. We also hope that if you enjoy this series, that you have already become a member of the Friends of Concordia. We count on the Friends to support this series and many of our other events. If you haven't joined yet, please consider doing so. And again, the brochures are out in the lobby, and contributions, small and large, all help us to continue these programs free of charge for you. Then please also complete one of the purple raffle cards. That will be your entry in the drawer at the end of the talk. And the prize, as usual, is a gift certificate to Womrath's Books. We have some extra cards. If any of you missed that, we can pass them around. Just hold up your hand now. Today, I'm delighted to welcome a very well-loved member of the Concordia faculty to lead our discussion. Dr. Joy Elwell is an assistant professor of nursing at Concordia. She is also the director of our college health services, the first person we turn to, both students and staff and faculty, when we have a health issue, not to mention for those vital flu shots. Concordia College will graduate its first class of professional nurses next month, career-changing adults who've pursued our successful post-baccalaureate Bachelors of Science in Nursing. And the Dean of Nursing, Susan Apold, has just announced the introduction of a new 4-year Bachelor of Science in Nursing for undergraduates. We're taking applications for the fall of 2010, and that is a very exciting development for the college. Joy Elwell has tremendous experience in this vital field. She's worked as a family nurse practitioner since 1994 and as a registered nurse since 1982. She completed a doctorate in nursing practice at Rush University in 2006. She serves on the board of directors of the Nurse Practitioners Association, New York State, and was named the Nurse Practitioner of the Year in 2007. In addition to teaching, running Concordia's health service, and a private practice, she leads a parish health ministry at Village Lutheran Church here in Bronxville. So Joy, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to us about David Kessler's book, The End of Overeating. I hope you appreciated the healthy snacks out there. And this is an apt topic a week before we all sit down for our Thanksgiving feast. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Anna. Well, now I see the microphone is working. Thank you, Carl, very much. I wasn't sure if the microphone was going to be working because it was so small, but I said, you know, I was the winner of the public speaking contest at McKinley Junior High School. I'm not going to tell you the year, but in 8th and 9th grade. So I was confident I could project my voice, but now I don't have to worry. If you have any trouble hearing me, though, please do not hesitate to put up your hand, and we'll make adjustments. The topic of The End of Overeating, this book, is very near and dear to my heart because as a nurse practitioner, as a nurse, obesity, overweight, the consequences of food choices I see on a daily basis. And right now, a third of our nation is obese, And we are projecting that by 2018, nearly half of our nation will be obese. And that's very alarming. So why is this happening? This is really the central question that David Kessler asked that resulted in the genesis of this book. I'm very proud to say that I know David Kessler, and that's why I really wanted to get this book when it came out. David Kessler was the director of pediatrics at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine when I was a nurse there 25 years ago. And he went on to be the head of the Food and Drug Administration for the United States. And he's now the dean of the School of Medicine at, I forgot for a second, but at University of California, San Francisco. So he's a very accomplished man. And how did this all happen? Well, David Kessler's kind of an interesting man. He says he has a suit in every size. I think we can relate, can we not? How many of us have a suit, ladies and gentlemen, a suit in every size, pants in multiple sizes, outfits in multiple sizes, because we know sometimes we're going to weigh less, and then we know inevitably around the holidays, stressful times, we're going to weigh more. David Kessler has struggled with his weight his whole life. And when he was head of the Food and Drug Administration, he was very instrumental in the work towards having cigarettes, having nicotine, not just cigarettes, but all forms of nicotine being designated as a drug so that could fall under the control of the Food and Drug Administration. And when they were doing the research on nicotine, what they identified was that, and this will come as no surprise, I think we all know this, it's been in the news for years, but the cigarette companies deliberately worked to make cigarettes more addictive. And so that resulted in more people abusing nicotine and quitting that much more difficult. Then he turned his sights to the food industry because he suspected that the food companies were doing the same thing. And you may say, well, that's their job. It is their job. It's Nabisco, whatever Sara Lee, whatever the company is. It's their job to make food succulent, to make food delicious. But it went beyond that. So, and I love this book because it's not just for healthcare providers. It's very readable. It is very appealing and a page turner, I would say, for the educated lay reader. So I'm going to talk about the various chapters, and I'm going to encourage you to buy it. There are copies out there. And I think it's there's a lot of useful information. But, sort of let me get started. And let me start with a question. What is it? You don't have to answer, you don't have to put your hands up, but just think to yourself, what is it that you love so much in food that you can't eat just one, as Bert Lahr would say, for the Lay's potato chips? Is it potato chips? Is it cookies? Is it ice cream? I'm here to guess. Amen. If we were at a gospel church, we'd be saying amen. Because what David Kessler discovered is that there are certain components in prepared foods that are addictive, if you will. And they are sugar, and salt, amen, and fat, oil, butter. So food companies work very hard to take foods and use the correct, for them, components or percentages or ingredient weight, if you will, to make the mix so delicious so that Not so that you love it, but to the point where you have to keep eating them and eating more of them until the whole package of cookies is gone or until the whole bag of potato chips is gone. Think for a minute. This is what they learned in the research. Think about what happens when you chew up a Snickers bar. It literally turns to a sauce in your mouth. It melts. And as it melts, it becomes more delicious than ever. And all of those little flavors come out. First the chocolate, and then the caramel, and then the peanuts and the salt that went with the peanuts. This has all been done very deliberately to make you want yet another Snickers bar. If you had a big one, well, you might feel guilty enough that you wouldn't have another one, but those little Halloween ones that we just got finished with, how many of you eat just one? I know at my house, I don't even buy them until the day before Thanksgiving, until the day before Halloween, because I know what's going to happen. They're not going to last. And it's just not just my children who are the culprits. It's my husband and it's me. And then the day after Thanksgiving, now here we are giving out the candies, and then the kids are bringing them home. So we have this balance going on. And then the day after, of course, the day after Thanksgiving, but the day after Halloween, we all have some Halloween candy left over. And can we just eat one a day? No, we can't. So what was happening to David Kessler as he was getting to start to read this book, to write this book? He talks about passing a pastry shop and feeling the need to go inside and not being able to get 10 steps past the shop, yet he has to turn around and go back inside. Has that happened to any of you? It's happened to me. What is calling us? Because it's not just knowing that those foods are in there. What's wafting out at us from the pastry shop? The fragrance, the odor. And what is it triggering? Your senses, but what else? What did Mom make for us? Those cookies that we smelled when we came home from school or on a Sunday afternoon. So the fragrance of food is such a multi-sensorial and multi-dimensional experience. It draws up memories from our childhood. The memory of the pleasure, the comfort of those experiences triggers us to want to go into the pastry shop. Those of you who have sold a home, what do they tell you to do? Bake an apple pie. Bake some cookies. Cook some cinnamon and cloves on top of the stove, because the fragrance will trigger positive memories in the potential, we hope, buyers, and they will want to live in that home. So what else did David Kessler do? He identified that we are getting heavier. 50 years ago, what would happen is you'd gain 10 pounds, 20 pounds in middle age. But then when you reached 60, you started to lose that extra weight till you went back to pretty much the weight that you weighed in your youth. It's not happening anymore, unfortunately. We're getting heavier and heavier and heavier. Part of it is that the food companies are very strategic about making foods that we want to eat more of. Part of it is also the American lifestyle. Our parents, how often did they market? Several times a week. Moms didn't work, and so marketing was a function of that was one of their jobs during the week. We don't do that anymore. So the idea of making food on a daily basis, cooking every day, fresh food every day, it's not really happening so much anymore. If it is, God bless you, then you're doing the right thing. But for many of us, going shopping means, I will tell you, it happens to me. I go into Seatown And my son says, he's 14 years old. Fortunately, he's a beanpole right now, but that's a function of his genetics. And he'll say, oh, Mom, can I don't really want what you're making tonight. Can I go and get a pizza, a chicken pot pie? All right. And how many calories are in the chicken pot pie? How many of you actually read the labels? 900 calories. And I didn't even know that until we got it home, and my daughter, who's 23 and does have a concern about these things, picked it up and said, oh my gosh, 900 calories. Now, he will burn those 900 calories off because he is 14 years old and he goes to gym all the time and he's on sports teams. But if we do that, if I do that, if any of us do that, where's it going to go? It's going to go here, it's going to go here. We're going to store it. And what does that pastry taste like on the chicken pot pie, on the Stouffer's chicken pot pie? Isn't it delicious? Isn't it just so, it's got just that wonderful mix of salt and fat in it. And that's what David Kessler talks about, how the manufacturer of Stouffer's chicken pot pie has worked very carefully to make that crust so delicious so that you won't just eat the chicken and the vegetables and the sauce that was in there. You would eat the entire crust and get the full benefit of the 900 calories. And food is entertainment. So there's also a visual component that he talks about. How when you see the pictures, now they've glossed it up, right? They've made them really beautiful. They've sprayed them with oil to make them shinier. But this attracts us. When you see a smorgasbord or a spread on a buffet, it's very attractive and it makes you hungry and you want to go and have that. Frustration, right? So what do we do about that? Well, in the book, he talks first about conditioned hypereating. I'm not ready to talk about the treatment just yet. Because what happens is seeing beautiful food, having happy memories triggered. And you know what? Maybe the memories aren't all happy. Are all those holiday meals joyful? Those of us who cooked them, maybe very stressful. Maybe Uncle Joe had too much to drink. So maybe the meal itself was not so much of a pleasant memory. But the taste of the food in your mouth was, right? So we remember that feeling. And if we've had a long, hard day, if we worked very hard, I will tell you what my father-in-law says. My father-in-law is obese. And he will say, and he has diabetes, he has all the consequences of obesity. He'll say, you know, I worked very hard, and I deserve to eat this food at the end of the day. So he's rewarding himself. Now, I'm picking on him right now, but I do it too. I do it too. I want to come home. Do any of you do it too? David Kessler does it too. At the end of the book, I'll give you a little spoiler for the end. He says, this isn't going to go away. I'm merely going to be able to cope with it better than I did before. And that's our goal. Okay? If that's what we achieve, then we will have succeeded tremendously. So, conditioned overeating emerges, where we have these memories of either the taste or the memory of the happy meal, if it was a happy meal, how the food smelled, how it made us feel. Because don't you feel terrific while you're chewing it up? And while you're swallowing it, doesn't that feel great? The guilt doesn't come till later on. As the food is so delicious, conditioned overeating, or he calls it hypereating. The portion sizes. What did the portion sizes look like in the restaurants 25 years ago, 30 years ago? They are significantly larger now. And there's a reason for that. The actual food, when we go to the restaurant, is not that expensive. It's eating out. It's having someone prepare it, being in the restaurant. So the restaurateurs want us to feel like we got our money's worth. And so they give us a portion. It's really enough for 2 meals. Am I right? You think? I think so. And what do? Whose mother, my mother did, whose mother said, clean your plate? Now, I didn't get the starving children in Africa part. She didn't say that to me. But she did say, you have to clean your plate. We were not allowed to leave the table until we cleaned our plate, my sister and I. It was a rule. My mother is a daughter of the Depression. So I am a daughter of the Depression. And when times were very lean, it was sinful to waste. Interestingly enough, my mother's sister, also a child of the Depression, found herself putting on the pounds. And what she realized she was doing was at the end of the meal, when she was cleaning the plates, she was eating all the food off the plates. Have any of you, I don't know if you're laughing because it's such a funny image, or you're laughing because you've done it too. Because I confess, I've taken a French fry off of somebody's plate when I was getting rid of the dishes in the kitchen. We've all, I think in our secret heart of hearts, I'm not looking for a show of hands, but I believe we have all, when we've cleaned the dishes, taken one little delicious morsel that perhaps was properly placed in the garbage pail. And what my Aunt Nellie said when she realized what she was doing, she said, you know, I'm not a garbage pail. So if the kids didn't eat it, if she couldn't force them to eat it like my mother was doing, she said it has to go in the garbage pail. And that's part of the treatment. So let me finish up on the section conditioned hypereating emerges to say that David talks about how as the portions get bigger and we have been conditioned as children to clean our plates, we keep cleaning them. And they're huge, these plates. And we eat it all. And we don't take home a doggy bag because we don't want people to maybe give us a funny look as we're leaving the restaurant. So we condition ourselves to think that the meal should be larger and larger. Or we serve family style and we take seconds. And that's how that happens. So then he goes into part 4 and he talks about the theory of treatment. Because what's happening? With all of this, I'm talking about the memories and the fragrances and the sights and the sounds. Neurochemical events are taking place in our brains. Happy chemicals, endorphins, serotonin. These chemicals are being released. Chemicals related to pleasure are being released in our brain when we even see food, when we smell food, when we taste it. And so we have to start looking at finding ways to have pleasure from food that does not involve a package of Oreo cookies or a box of Dunkin' donut holes, or whatever it is that's doing it for you, or a bag of Lay's potato chips, whatever it is, or a 16-ounce steak. Who needs to eat 16 ounces of steak? We have to be able to start to step back and find pleasure. And yes, the food will still be pleasurable. But in looking at the portion sizes and the types of the foods, for those of you who are the fat lovers, I'm one of those, who love the sensation, because that's really what that is, the sensation, they call it, the term is mouth feel, the sensation of the oil in your mouth or the butter melting in your mouth. Well, certainly using less and using better. And it's no surprise that olive oil is better for us than butter. That liquid oils are better for us than solid fats. So he talks about that. He talks about re-educating your brain, reversing the habit. Instead of taking a package of cookies to the television, a package of whatever it is, a big bowl of dip, and a couple of little carrot sticks for virtue. Take a tablespoon. I'm detecting that this is not the most fun part of the discussion, but it's very important. And then he talks about rules of disengagement, because we're very engaged with the food. Have you ever thought about food all day? A certain food that you really wanted to have, that you were thinking about, well, I'll just buy that on the way home, or I know it's in my house and I can't wait to get to it. That's what was happening to Dr. Kessler. If he bought, I think it was brownies, he could not stop thinking about them until he ate them. I will do that. I'll think about, well, all right, what's in my house when I get there? And I really want to have that, and it happens to all of us. So we have to think of rules of disengagement. Well, you know, Emma was very kind. She put this under my podium, and I just dropped the hand mic, but I'll pick it up. Some of this is mindfulness. What are we going to buy? Will we always have a bottle of water? Will we keep a carafe of water on our desk so that we can hydrate ourselves with something that is healthy for us instead of running down to the soda machine? And then emotional learning. He has a chapter on emotional learning. And what he's talking about in emotional learning is, why is that happening? When you feel that desire or that hankering, stop. Are you really hungry? Or maybe were you thirsty? Because if we're not drinking throughout the day, we become dehydrated. And we interpret that as hunger when we were really thirsty. So sometimes drinking a glass, there's 2 glasses in here, a glass of water will help that. And then looking at the choices. It was wonderful to go out to that table out there and see some really good choices. There were nuts. There was fruit. And actually, the fruit was almost all gone. So it was attractive to us, and we were selecting it. How do we do that? How do we have, you know, if you buy a melon and maybe it's going to, you know, turn mushy in a couple of days, well, that might hurt your Scottish soul. And you don't want to make that happen. So having, you know, what's in season. I talk to my patients a lot about what's in season right now. Well, right now is terrific because apples are in season and they last. So you can have a nice bowl of apples on the table, and there's a nice, easy choice. It's maybe not as exciting a choice as the whatever, the muffins, the donuts, the chips, but it's a healthier choice. And having it there is really essential, because when we're feeling that way, when we're feeling stressed, reaching for something quickly is what's going to be important. So having that choice there is really very important. So after Dr. Kessler talks about the theory of treatment, he goes into food rehab. Oh no, now we have to go to rehab. But he's talking about just the things that I've been talking about now. Creative strategies so that when we're getting ready to go home at the end of the day, when we're setting out at the beginning of the day. I work with a lot of overweight and obese patients. And one of the things I learned from them is that they rush, a lot of them are parents, they rush to get out of the house in the morning and they don't bring food with them. Now, number one, it's a very expensive choice, because if you're buying food while you're out, it's going to cost a lot more. And I have to tell you, I'm so proud of my daughter, Diana. First of all, little pitch, she's graduating from the Concordia nursing program in 3 weeks, and I am the proudest mother on the face of the earth. So I'm very happy about that. But right now, she's doing a preceptorship in the Jacobi Hospital emergency room. Very exciting. I'm also proud about that because that's where I started my career, so it's really wonderful. At any rate, they have, forgive my pronunciation, en bon pain. Did I say it correctly? You all know what I'm talking about. They have one in the lobby of Jacobi Hospital. And that's nice. But number one, it's expensive. Lunch is about $10. She's not getting paid yet. And number two, it's full of salt, it's full of fat, it's full of sugar. It's very delicious, the croissants, all of that, but it's really not healthy. It's really not the healthiest choice, and certainly not the most frugal choice. So I was particularly pleased the other morning when she was setting out, and I said, well, do you have money for un bon pain? And she said, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm bringing food with me. And she had a whole bunch of healthy stuff. She had an apple, she had some tuna salad. Just the 15 minutes or so to put that together, well, she doesn't have an obesity problem, but it saved her some calories, and it saved her about $9. Probably it saved her 10 because I bought all that food. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. You know, we all know, this is no big surprise, that the food that we buy in the grocery store and prepare is, number one, going to be better for us nutritionally and cheaper, more economical. So that's one thing, to think ahead, to buy staples, to have them in the house, and to have them available, to have them at your desk, to bring a water with you to work, to have a carafe of water on the desk, to bring some toasted almonds to work. I was just at a conference, a nurse practitioner conference. They were giving out the National Almond Board, I think that's the name of the group, was giving out these envelopes, and in them were these adorable little tins about this big. Can I make a good rectangle? Well, at any rate, 2 by 3 inches, and by an inch deep. And they are constructed so that they hold 23 almonds. 23 almonds is the appropriate serving size. So when we say have a handful of almonds, we don't mean a handful like this, which was what we probably want, but a handful meaning 23 almonds. So I'm not saying I do this every day. I'm not as virtuous as I should be, but when I think of it, I just scoop up almonds and close the lid and throw it in my purse, and there you have your little snack. And if you go to Starbucks and you buy the same little package of almonds, it's, how much is it? $2, $2.65, something like that, for about 25 cents worth of almonds. 20 cents, 15 cents worth of almonds. So that is one of the things that Dr. Kessler addresses in the food rehab part. Then he talks about letting go of the past. Now, I think this is probably the most difficult thing, because I'm not suggesting that we all go into therapy, psychotherapy, to address letting go of the past. And I think the past, those of us who are the mental health professionals, I see you in the back, we know that the past is always with us. But put the past in the correct place. When you do smell the birthday cake being baked, acknowledge the memory. Reflect on it. Think about it. But we don't need to eat half the cake. And then avoiding traps. What's next week? Thanksgiving Day. And that's a potential trap. What's 4 weeks down the line? After that, Christmas or Hanukkah? And what's a week after that? New Year's. Oh my gosh, it's the trifecta of temptation. So we have to think ahead. We could have, instead of having the eggnog, I'm sorry, I know this is a painful part, but instead of having the eggnog, have a white wine spritzer or just club soda with lemon. If we're going to have alcohol, alternate, and we're at a party, 1 drink with alcohol and then a soda, a diet soda, a water. These are the kinds of things that are going to turn an obsession, and he calls it that in the book, an obsession with food, into something that we can manage. At the end of the book, Dr. Kessler acknowledges, as I said earlier, that his love affair with food isn't over, but it's in a better place, and it's more manageable. And that's what I think that we can all learn from this book, how to make the obsession, how to make the love affair manageable so that we're managing it and it's not managing us. And on that note, I want to thank you very much for your attention. and open up the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, Joy. And we have some time for questions. We have a microphone here and one over on the far aisle. So please give us a moment to bring the mic to you so everybody can hear your question. Somebody like to ask the first question?
I think the interesting thing to me about reading part of the book was that it was really nothing new, that fat, sugar, and salt were the culprits. And I don't think anybody in this room really doesn't know that. But I think that the interesting part may be that the presentation, how it is addictive. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we're big dry cereal people in the morning, and we have all different kinds of cereal. And the interesting thing is when they're required to have the calories and sugar and fat on that nutrition label, the one thing that they're not required is to have a standard serving size. So some cereals might have lower sugar and fat and salt in it, but what they've done is like reduce the serving size to a half a cup or 3/4 of a cup, while some other cereals are a cup and a quarter of a cup. So I think it's very deceptive on that labeling, even though they're trying to be good about and they're being forced to present the nutrition information.
You're exactly right, and that's sort of the conspiracy theory that it's conspiracy. Americans love conspiracy theories. We find them very intriguing, and there is some intrigue in this. And you are raising the issue that the cereal manual. Let's blame them. Let's pick on them for a moment. The cereal manufacturers want you to buy their cereal. They want you to think it's healthy. They'll say part of a balanced breakfast, and oh my gosh, there's that breakfast with you're going to have cereal and toast. And juice, and so that's a pretty big breakfast. But you are smart because you're reading the labels, and I think we're probably all label readers, and we need to be label readers because what we're finding out is that we're consuming far more food than we thought we were. And this is like true confessions. I will say sometimes at the end of the day, I'll eat something healthy. I'm going to have a bowl of cereal. Well, do I really want to have a cup? No. I want to fill the cereal bowl with the cereal, and I'll put skim milk over it, so that's not so terrible. But if we are not going to stick with the serving size, then we're going to get ourselves into trouble. So you're absolutely right. What you may want to do when you're in the cereal aisle, looking at the cereals, trying to pick one out, pick one that affords you the ability to eat a reasonable amount, like 3/4 to a full cup, and get the amount of calories, carbohydrates, fiber that will do you the most good and satisfy you and make you happy. And there's also putting fresh fruit on top. So if you love that cereal, I love that cereal, but I can only have a half a cup of it. Then get a half a cup of blueberries and put them on top of that.
Put them on the bottom, make a cup bigger.
Yeah, so he said, put it underneath and make it look like more, and it'll be very delicious. It'll be very healthy.
Did you have a question?
I think, based on experiences that I've had with cousins and relatives of the extended family, that the medical profession has been derelict in not letting people know what the consequences are of obesity. I had a cousin who loved ice cream. Walked down the street, he was told he had diabetes. And his mother saw him walking down the street, scoffing up an enormous ice cream. He had his kids with him, and they were trying to get Angelo to give him ice cream. And she said to him, "Angelo, the doctor said you got diabetes. You shouldn't eat that." And Angelo said, I live, I die, I die. Unfortunately, what the doctor never impressed on him was that Angela would actually die by inches. He had several parts of his body amputated over time. His heart became inflamed or whatever it was that finally did him in. He lost his sight and finally died. Unfortunately, a lot of people have the idea that it's a simple, I live, I die. And I believe the medical community is completely remiss in not letting people know that they can go out like my cousin Angelo or Gloria's mother-in-law and some other folks where they've had to have legs amputated and different things. Nobody brings that forward.
Well, I don't know if, no, I think you have a point. I think there are many healthcare providers. I'm not going to differentiate between which ones, but there are many, and we know them. I had a patient this morning very angry with me because I told her, she has diabetes, and I told her that the ultimate consequence or the ultimate sequela of diabetes is death. And she yelled at me. She said, Dr. Elwell, every time I come here, you tell me I'm going to die. And I said, no, I have never told you that. I tell you the ultimate sequela or outcome of diabetes is death. That's the same thing. I said, no, it's not, because the control of this disease is in your hands. And then she told me how other doctors that she's been to, now I'm a nurse practitioner, I'm not a physician, but nurse practitioner, so I'll tout my profession. We are very focused on wellness and health, and we can diagnose, treat, and prescribe just like a physician, but our focus is really more on wellness. She said, I've had doctors that told me that, a blood sugar of 200, that's not so bad, and I'll just give you medicine. And Dr. Elwell, how come you're not doing that? How come you're not helping me through my diabetes? Well, I want to reverse your diabetes. And the only way to do that, there is no easy fix. And it's not going to be with medicine. Medicine will control to a point. But if we don't eat properly, if we don't exercise, then we're going to need more and more and more medicine until we finally need insulin. Injections of insulin, that will be an inevitable outcome. And then that will not be enough. And then death will be the ultimate sequela. So you have a point that many, I won't say all, many providers do not emphasize the consequences of overeating. I think that some providers are afraid of driving their patients away. I'm not saying they want to keep them unhealthy. I don't believe that. But I think they may be afraid of insulting them or offending them or hurting their feelings. How unfortunate that there are those in our community that do that are concerned about hurting patients' feelings or clients' feelings. And the trade-off is we have sicker and sicker clients. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you believe that fish is important in the diet as we're led to believe? And if so, shrimp, crab meat, and lobster qualify?
And the good news is yes. Fish is wonderful. In Europe, if you've had a heart attack, everybody takes fish oil. That is a prescription. Everybody must take that. So fish oil is very good for us. So eating fish is very good for us. Fish is low in fat. It's high in protein. So then people say, well, shrimp, lobster, the shellfishes get a bad rap because they have more cholesterol. Okay. Now, let's just, if we could address that for a minute. Dietary cholesterol. For those of us who have hyperlipidemia, high levels of bad cholesterol, our healthcare providers may advise us to consume foods that are lower in cholesterol, and we may even be taking medications to help us manage that. The good news is that you can still, even if you have hyperlipidemia, you can still eat shrimp and crab meat and lobster, because you know what? It's really all about achieving a healthy balance. If you wanted to have a meal that had some, now having fried shrimp. I don't know. I don't think that would probably be the best choice. But some grilled shrimp with some broccoli, if we were having, those green foods, those yellow foods, those orange foods that maybe we didn't love so much when we were children, but we really need to learn how to like them because they do make a big difference. And having a variety of different foods on the plate is going to make a difference in our lipids, our blood chemistry, and our waistline. Any other questions? Yes?
How long should green vegetables keep their potency for being good in the diet?
All right. I don't think I agree with that. Some folks. Yeah, I think well, you have to tell me if I'm answering the question correctly. I believe the question was, how long can you keep a vegetable? Tough question, because frozen vegetables. Okay, certainly. The question was, how long does a fresh vegetable retain its nutrients before they deteriorate and then it's not a good vegetable anymore? Well, fresher is better. The day you buy it is probably its best. Understand, it didn't come straight from the farm. It was in transit probably for a couple of days already. It may have been kept cold to enhance its freshness and help it to stay fresher longer. So newer is better, but here's where frozen vegetables, which, by the way, are as healthy as fresh, might be a very good choice. Because if you go and you buy some frozen vegetables and you keep them in your freezer, and then you take them out when you want them. Well, they were flash frozen on the farm in most cases. So they're really very new. I hope I answered that question. Any other questions? Yes?
In this day and age, it's hard to believe that people don't know being obese is not healthy. It's on the television, it's in the newspapers. So people make a choice. I mean, if you give a child an apple or a cookie, most likely it's going to choose the cookie. It has to be told maybe by the mother. But I mean, adults should know that they're doing the wrong thing. You can't blame them to the doctors.
Well, that's the whole premise of the end of overeating. Because if someone as knowledgeable and as accomplished as David Kessler can struggle with his weight and need to have a suit in every size, then I'm not going to say it's hopeless for the rest of us, because it's not. But it should make us realize what a difficult, challenging issue it is. Knowledge is, you have the knowledge part of it, the intellectual part of it, and then you have the emotional part of it. And that is very, very hard to deal with, the desire for the food, wanting to eat more than one, emotional overeating. How many of you, when you were a child, had a really bad day and your mom gave you some cookies? Or said, I'm going to bake a pie. Now, this is featured in a lot of movies and comedies where you have somebody who's obese and their mother's bringing them a pie or a cake or a big bowl of spaghetti. But the concept of food as love, food as an expression of love, is very much a part of the fabric of our lives. The anniversary dinner, the bride making the first big dinner for her new husband. It's very traditional. Now we have to have the husband making the meal for the new bride. But I think you know what I mean. Food as an expression of love is very, very prevalent in our society. And really, you know what, not this society, in society at large, in global society. Because pick a culture, pick a nationality, pick an ethnic group, And I will, and you all can too, rattle off the foods that are, we'll say, oh, I'm going to have German food tonight, I'm going to have Italian, or I'm going to have Jamaican food. Because in all of our cultures, the gratification that we get from eating is such that food becomes an expression of love. And it's very hard to deal with. Those people who work with addictions, well, food can be an addiction too. Addictions are tough. Molly.
Joy, how do you feel about sugar substitutes like Equal or Splenda?
Very interesting. It's not that they're not safe. I'm not going to have that argument. It's not that they're not safe. Oh, okay. The question was, what do I think of sugar substitutes like Splenda and Equal? The problem is that in many cases, they make you hungrier. That's the problem with sugar substitutes. That you put a bunch of Splenda in your, you thought you're making this really healthy drink of lime juice and water, and you put some Splenda in there to make limeade, and you drink the whole thing down, and then you find out that you're thirstier or hungrier than you were before. So they can stimulate the desire for more food. So we think we're doing this really good diet thing, and we may be sabotaging ourselves. And the problem is this is the love of sugar, the love of sweets. So if sweets are your trigger to make you want to eat more sweets, then using Splenda, and I like Splenda, so I'm not smashing them or anything, but to use some Splenda may not help you because you're going to want to eat some more.
I have time for one more question. I think we have a couple of them.
Okay, I have two quick questions. One is, you mentioned your 14-year-old son and said that he is a beanpole, which is partly due to genetics. What part do you think genetics play in obesity? And secondly, do you think food addictions are hereditary? David Kessler mentions that we get addicted to food because of the sugar and the salt combination, and that the manufacturing companies have done this on purpose. What percentage of people do you think are just born with that addiction, or can you make that statement?
I can't tell you what percentage is born that way. I can tell you that genetics will certainly play a role in your body shape. Some of us, and we're probably all going, yeah, maybe that's me. I can remember as a teenager being very, very, very skinny to the point where I was too thin, and it was not an eating disorder. I wanted to weigh more and I wanted to eat more, but I just didn't. That's not my problem anymore. Sometimes I wish it was, but that's not a good thing to wish for. So yes, genetics has a great deal to do with your body shape. Addictions do tend to run in families. So I think it would be fair and reasonable to extrapolate that food addiction could also run in families. I'm not saying it as a hard and fast statement, but I don't think it's unreasonable to say. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, no, that's good. Now I'm kind of wondering, is there research being done to help people who are food addicts, so to speak? It's easy for us to sit here and judge people who are obese and say you have a choice not to eat. But I don't think anyone chooses to be heavy. I think everyone who's heavy really prefers to be thin, but more, I don't know.
And also as you age, those of us who are in middle age and beyond know that it goes on a lot easier than it comes off. And that's a painful reality. That when you're 14 years old and a teenager and running around playing sports, when you're 23 years old and you're a new nurse graduate and you're running up and down the halls, it's a lot easier to burn it off than when you are 55 years old and sitting at a computer for a significant part of the day, because I'm going to sort of have this is going to be my little closing statement. It has been found that Americans work harder and longer than any other industrialized nation. However, we don't do it in the farms anymore. And we don't do it even so much on the assembly lines anymore, where you might be standing up and walking around. We do it sitting on our backsides at a desk. And so we have adopted a sedentary lifestyle that that potentiates this problem. And I'm going to say thank you so much. Now you pick the winner.
Joy, thank you so much. We'll remember to take plenty of exercise over the holiday season, as well as enjoying some good home cooking.